Brian, you do some amazing work in the College of Ed at San Jose State, and I'm curious to learn how you manage your workflow.
Well, first of all, thank you for that compliment. Appreciate it. Sometimes I feel like I'm on one of those game shows where you get put into the booth and then they have money kind of blowing around all over the place, and you have to just like scramble to grab whatever you can. I feel like it's an appropriate metaphor just because, I've mentioned to you, I feel like part of my role is ultimately to really just amplify, shine a spotlight on, elevate a lot of the things that are already happening within the College of Education. So a lot of the experiences, a lot of the impact, a lot of the opportunities from our faculty, our students, staff, alumni, et cetera. And so with that, that's where kind of the metaphor comes in, because there's just so much activity happening that I think is worth kind of, you know, grabbing and shining a spotlight on or amplifying so other people become aware of it. Um, that it kind of does feel like that in a lot of ways. And so I think for me, part of it just becomes a challenge of creating a system around that so that when that information becomes known, um, I'm able to very quickly and efficiently like put it together and then share it out there with our different subgroups within the college, different audiences outside of the college or other stakeholders. So that I think that's part of it. It's like kind of getting the organizational structure in place. So just some examples of things that I did once I started up in the College of Education was creating a blog for our college. So that is kind of the repository, I guess you could say, of where every piece of news goes. So then at least from there, we have a URL that we can use if we're sharing it out, on kind of one-off announcements. So if I'm sharing something on social media, then I can link directly to that blog post if I want to, unless that information's on another web page that we want to direct people towards to get more information. That also gets consolidated into a weekly newsletter that gets sent out. So then there's not a need to kind of create another like redundant system to send out this information. Um, and then even when we think about things like videos or podcasts, recordings, things along those lines, I want to make sure that if we're putting a lot of time and energy into capturing those stories and shining a spotlight on them, that we're trying to be very thoughtful about the delivery and dissemination of that information too. So trying to kind of work backwards, I guess, right? And think about what is it that we want the end result of this to be in terms of how it's going to be delivered to folks and disseminated, and then working backwards to figure out, okay, then what do we need to do up front to create this experience, whether it's a podcast or a video, so that we can get from the start point to the end point without it, being too inefficient or not allowing us to be able to utilize it on different mediums and platforms. So even if you just think about sharing out a story on different social media platforms, they all have kind of their own user experience and different criteria in terms of like aspect ratios for photos or videos or character limits and all those things. So thinking about all those different variables and constraints up front, you can then kind of work backwards, like I said, to figure out what you want to do initially so that you don't run into those obstacles later on.
I love being able to recognize the commonalities of essential study skills, such as scheduling, beginning with an end in mind, organization, as you're talking through this. I sometimes don't even want to look at my Google Docs because it's so disorganized. I'm learning how to make folders for them and organize it better. But as a student, it's so overwhelming, right? That transition from high school to college, there's just so much, so much. Worksheets, materials, assignments, assessments. And part of what I hear you say is give yourself enough time to understand what it is you want to be able to get out of this course and what it is you want to learn, and kind of reverse engineer that problem so that you don't get overwhelmed. Because we all know as the quarter goes on or as the term goes on, it becomes harder. It gets really, really hard. So
Mm-hmm.
front loading some of that in the planning, in the scheduling, in the organization systems is key. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And just, ultimately just getting the system set up for yourself that works. You and I have talked about this a couple of times, but my It's not so much a system, but really just a goal, I guess, for my inbox to have less than 10 emails in it at any given time. I've been doing that for 10 years now at this point. That pretty much every single day I have less than 10 emails in my inbox at all times. And, it's kind of a small, not small, I mean, it's just kind of a random goal, but I think that the larger picture for that is that it allows me to really make sure that I'm staying on top of my communications with folks, staying on top of whatever tasks I need to take care of, whatever projects I need to take care of, and helping me prioritize how and when I need to get things done. And I feel like if I start from that standpoint of making sure that my inbox is managed and maintained effectively, then that kind of feeds into all these other things.
And for audience members who are unfamiliar with the concept of systems, you're more than welcome to Google that. But another way to think about systems is productive habits, right? Or habits that we aspire to have. So just break it apart little by little and make incremental changes towards working up to the goals of scheduling and organization and making use of lecture notes, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you so much, Ryan, for joining me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.